sir. Say what's up to the people, Coach.
Pastor Mike, how you doing? Hey, everybody out there. Hope you're all doing well.
Yeah, man. I'm doing all right, and we are, in a crazy time. 20-something days till an election. Still got a pandemic going, but we did crown an NBA champion yesterday. So
yeah, the longest season in NBA history finally finished, and it felt like the longest season ever for the Warriors. I can tell you that. So it was a long year, but I'll tell you what. I'm really proud of the NBA, Mike, for pulling this off. You know, when you think about the obstacles that the league had to overcome in order to create a safe and healthy environment for the players, and not a single COVID case, and then to provide the entertainment for the fans, and have an exciting playoff run. All the broadcast partners, they found a way to make the games really exciting, and even without any fans there, it was an amazing job by the league. So I'm very, very proud of that, and proud to be a part of the NBA.
Yeah, big shout out to the NBA, the NBA Players Association, all the teams, all the officials. It was indeed quite a feat, particularly when you're seeing the struggles other sports leagues are having with being able to kind of pull that together. I mean, shoot, when you see how the kind of struggle the White House is having, I mean, absolutely, it was quite a feat, and as a Bay Area person, it was great to hear even the strength in numbers tribute quote that LeBron threw in his speech last night, just reminding us that we're better together.
Did he say that?
Yeah. He was like, we hear Golden State say it all the time. And we have strength in numbers, and it just goes to show you on and on and on that when people come together, we could do great things. And so even though we weren't there getting our trophy, our obligatory trophy, the spirit of the Warriors was there in the building.
Well, that's good. I have to admit, I wasn't watching by that time. I didn't want to watch anybody else celebrating winning the championship. So.
Well, I'll say this, we have for the last 7 months been really attempting to help us win a different kind of championship. And that's one that is about us ensuring, number one, that people get the best up-to-date information and an opportunity to partner to defeat this global pandemic that has visited the earth, literally the world. But the lackluster, I'll say, response by our country, our government, and even many of us who are citizens has really caused this pandemic to impact our communities much more difficultly. And so we are here for Mass for the People every week, just lifting up some of the best information we have and have guests, but also reminding ourselves that you got to wash your hands, you got to wear a mask, you got to social distance, do all that you can that's within our power. But we are in an important election season. And so these Mass for the People sessions are going to have a special voter emphasis. And it's great to watch your leadership and many others helping us to make sure we can vote, and we're, removing the obstacles for people to vote.
Man, and there sure are a lot of obstacles, aren't there? I was watching some of the stories today from Georgia. People were waiting 5-6 hours in line, and it's inspiring and maddening all at the same time. We should be in a country that celebrates democracy and makes voting as easy as possible. Unfortunately, we're not doing that. We're making things difficult and confusing in many cases. So we've got to all try to do our best to help each other understand what's happening out there, and make life as easy as possible for voters, and give them every chance to get out and express their opinion.
Well, tonight we're going to try and amplify that on the first half of this conversation. We have one of the most legendary civil rights leaders in the history of our country who tapped in with us and wanted to come on and get a chance to talk about the importance of this season. He's a Chicago native, so I'm sure the Chicago connection with the Bulls and Reverend Jackson contributed to this timing as well. But nevertheless, it's an important moment and opportunity for us to have this conversation. So we're going to bring onto the screen at this time the Reverend Jesse Jackson, the legendary Reverend Jesse Jackson of the Rainbow Push Coalition, and my good friend Pastor Joseph Bryant, who pastors in San Francisco, but also leads the Rainbow Push efforts in the Bay Area. Great to have you both here. Say hello to the great Reverend Jesse Jackson, Coach Steve Kerr.
Well, hey,
Coach Jackson, great to see you again.
Well, I'm a Draymond Green, Steph Curry man. Hello.
I remember when you were a Scottie Pippen, Michael Jordan man back in the day.
And you impacting too.
You went to a lot of our games back then. I remember seeing you all the time, whether it was in Chicago or in New York. I saw you a lot at Knicks games at the Garden. You were a big Bulls fan back then, weren't you?
Well, I think you when you put your reputation on the line as a coach on the court and a man beyond the court, you make all of us feel good about the sport. Thank you so much, Steve.
Well, I appreciate the compliment and thank you for all you've done in your incredible life for social justice and fighting for equality.
Well, you know, part of what we wanted to do before we jump into the conversation about voting, we have pulled together a video. We reached out to Reverend Jackson and his team, the Black Church PAC and our Action Fund and some of our organizing folks back in the early part of this year. Dr. Ron Daniels, you remember that name, Reverend Jackson?
I do.
And so he was telling us about this speech you gave called David and Goliath. And we said, you know what? We're going to make that a key part of how we encourage people to vote this year. And so take a look at this video, Reverend Jackson, and we love to hear some of your take on just this video, that speech, and the important thing about voting. So let's take a quick look.
The state of our union is stronger than ever before.
You will not replace us.
We are building the world's most prosperous and inclusive society.
Tell people not to come to our country illegally.
We passed the 2 articles of impeachment. The president is impeached.
You know, the virus, it's going to disappear. One day, it's like a miracle. It will disappear.
If a city or state refuses to take the actions that are necessary, then I will deploy the United States military and quickly solve the problem for them. He won by the margin of despair. He won by the margin, the fracture of our coalition. He won by the margin of racial division. He won by default, not by genius. He won when we were asleep. We got more and more folk and fewer services. We cannot stop. We got to rise on higher. It's time for a new course, a new coalition, a new leadership. Somebody got to rise above race, rise above sex, a new leadership, a choice, a chance. There's a little shepherd boy named David. Everybody in town was scared of Goliath. Little David took off his unnecessary garments. Little David didn't want to get weighted down with a lot of foolishness. Little David took what God gave him, a slingshot and a God biscuit, a rock. Our problem today is really organized, non-registered blacks, Hispanics, rocks, just laying around. Students unregistered, 11 million college students who could have chosen jobs over jails, peace over walls that didn't vote. Now they're crying. Rocks, just laying around. We're going to stop the rocks. It's been laying around and pick them up. Rocks, just laying around. Don't cry about what you don't have. Use what you got. You want somebody who marched For you to get the right to vote, you got a choice. Want somebody who challenged corporate America to hire you and give you contracts? You got a choice. Rocks, just laying around. Your time has come. Pick up your slingshot. Pick up your rock. Declare our time has come. A new day has begun. Red, yellow, black, and white. We're all precious in God's sight. Our time has come. It's choice time.
Wow. Man, that guy was something, wasn't he? You know, the point is that we lost by the margin of unused votes. You never lose a big championship by not making free throws. It's one thing to run in and get a shot blocked and miss a three, but to lose a game where you miss 15 free throws is a damn shame. And all we're saying is that we're losing big race by the margin of people who did not vote and then use their franchise. Dr. King would often say that he wanted to vote because in the case of Emmett Till, when Emmett Till was lynched, the jury convened. They knew who killed Emmett Till. They knew who killed him. The guy was almost bragging about it killing him. And the jury was out 30 minutes. They came in and said, no indictment. And they asked, one writer asked, why did the jury so? He said, well, it was quick because we could have been quicker. He said, we cannot imagine a white man going to jail for killing a nigger. Dr. King said, one juror could have hung the whole process. Just one juror. And so, in some sense, those who want criminal justice have to vote to serve on juries. The thing I like about democracy, Steve, is that you can vote your adversary out of power without destroying the person. You put yourself in power without destroying anybody. I remember walking down the streets of Oakland at the Evergreen Baptist Church when Congressman Dellums was running so many years ago. And we used the vote. Today, Mac, Montgomery, Alabama, the black mayor, Selma, Alabama, Birmingham, Alabama, Richmond, Virginia, Atlanta, Georgia, Savannah, Georgia, use the political process. The political process is redemptive. You can change power without having to destroy somebody. And that's what I like about democracy. You can change power and become powerful without having to destroy anybody.
Yeah, you know, it's fascinating to me that you gave that speech, I believe, in '84, and man, that was almost 25. No, that had to be, is my math right? 16, 20? That was 35 some years ago, and it's still true today. One of the great things that we've been doing with this partnership with Steve and the NBA is making sure that many people have the opportunity to vote, and we're using our platforms to spread that message. Steve, you want to just talk a little bit about that and maybe ask Rev some of his thoughts about it?
Yeah, you know, we're just trying really hard in the NBA to make sure that people in all 30 NBA cities have every opportunity to vote. So, for example, today in Georgia, Lloyd Pierce, the head coach of the Hawks, was manning one of the stations at the Hawks arena, and the entire arena was opened up as a polling center. And you know, Lloyd said that people were in and out of there in 20 minutes.
Wow.
And you know, compare that to across the state in many polling stations in Georgia, it was taking people 5-6 hours. So you know, we're trying all over the country through the NBA Coaches Association and Players Association and league office to try to open up the vote, to try to make things as easy as possible, because we know of the history in this country. We know of the history of voter suppression. It's gotten much more sophisticated now than it was a couple hundred years ago, but it still exists. We see it in so many states. So what we're doing with the Warriors is we're opening up the Chase Center as a ballot drop-off place. And we have a lot of things going on our social media platforms, trying to appeal to people to register to vote and make it as easy as possible. And I'm very, very proud of the work the Warriors are doing in that regard.
You know what I like when athletes move the whole world. With David and Goliath, Samson, the Philistines, athletes move. I mean, back in when blacks were untouchables, when Jack Johnson beat Tom Jeffries, an athlete defied the science of racism. Jack Robinson brought it into baseball. Joe Louis beat Max Mellon. Thomas Smith and Carlos in the Olympics. Athletes have awesome power. And this time around, really under the inspiration of LeBron James, we see a different kind of athlete supported by the infrastructure. Right? You can be an athlete and be relevant and don't have to be defined your organization. The NBA itself supports voter registration. And see, that's new. That's a good thing.
Yeah, it's exciting.
Pastor Joe, you know, you've been helping to lead the effort, particularly around the Rainbow Push Check efforts, closing the digital divide. But you also have a whole lot of relationships with athletes and influencers. Just talk a little bit about how your leadership along Reverend Jackson and Rainbow Push is really helping to continue to keep the kind of advocacy of these issues at the forefront of our minds.
Reverend Jackson, he knows no bounds when it comes to reaching people and giving them the right message at the right time. And so in as much as he's had a voice in helping to advocate for African Americans being empowered in sports, you know, he worked with the Rooney family to shape what became known as the Rooney Rule. He helped Joe Dumars when he was applying for a general manager job, and he helped Bob Johnson when he wanted to become an owner of the basketball team. He helped Magic go into, you know, decision-making processes, and he wanted to make sure that the athlete was more than an athlete. And so that's a part of his legacy. You know, he was so close to the Jackie Robinson family that he eulogized Jackie, and he's been a part of this pattern for years. And so today, as you know, Steve mentioned, you know, Reverend can show up at a game. We go to all-star games and championships, but really he is pulling aside the African-American athlete and reminding them you're more than that. And so he'll talk to these young men during warm-ups and shoot around and just remind them, use your platform for the greater good. Speak to the things that matter to you. Go back to your community and help people to understand the value of these kind of things, to the extent that even right here in Oakland, we were able to work with now a assistant coach champion who's a part of our Oakland community. You know, Jason Kidd, he came back to Oakland last summer, and not only did he renovate the gym where he worked out in as a kid, we were able to put a tech program there. And so Reverend Jackson led us to engage Silicon Valley and bring pipelines to power to say, we want to make sure that our African-American brothers and sisters, people of color, those that have been underserved are being blessed and benefited, not just having a cell phone and being able to text and have apps on their phone, but learn how to do coding and app development. And so along with a lot of basketball players last summer, Steve, we were just so grateful to engage athletes right there in Oakland who wanted to just come and tell kids, stay in school, listen to your parents, stay out of trouble. Shoot the J if you can, but learn tech, because that'll take you even farther. And so that's a part of Reverend's legacy, that we just continuously have a message that goes beyond the obvious. And he's done that with athletes. He's done that in the tech segment. And now we're doing it across the nation by pushing the voter registration, pushing the need for people to be aware and intelligent about the decisions, and making sure they know that their voice and their vote really matters.
Man, when I was growing up in South Carolina, Fair's house, I couldn't apply to Clemson. I had to go to the University of Illinois to play football. I couldn't even apply to school 30 miles from home. When Clemson plays Alabama in the big football game, Harvey Gantt went to Clemson on the federal protection, often losing to Alabama over George Wallace. Now you see Alabama playing Clemson in the big game. Or you see the Heat winning against all odds. What makes athletics so exciting to me is that the reason why the Heat can compete, the reason why we can, the underdog, the reason why Seattle can come back last night. Whenever the playing field is even, rules are public, goals clear, referee fair, and scores transparent, we can make it. and that's why you see black and white athletes embracing each other, because it's not uniform color, it's skin color, it's uniform color. It's direction, not complexion. And so athletes, and another thing, see, you can't decide to be 6'10" because you feel like growing tall. Or you cannot be an accurate shooter because you practice. These are gifts of God. And athletes have some obligation to use these gifts. Yesterday, I had my birthday celebration Saturday. We're giving away 1,000 women with children baby diapers. Some babies will walk around with baby diapers all day long. They can't change baby diapers. Need support to get baby diapers and baby shoes and food. And the beauty of it is that to see mothers come running, say, well, how will you spend your birthday? Because I want my birthday to be my way of making heaven happy. How do you make heaven happy? When you take care of the least of these, you make heaven happy. When you have those who back against the wall, and so I think if heaven make me happy another year, I can make heaven happy by doing what Jesus would have us to: feed the hungry and clothe the naked and set the captive free.
Yes, sir. Woo!
I love it. I love it. I have a question for you, Reverend. You mentioned LeBron James, and I know in the Bay Area we're very proud of so many of our athletes. Steph Curry, of course, from the Warriors. Colin Kaepernick from the 49ers for making his stand. It seems to me, and I was a very young boy at the time, but this time seems to remind a lot of people of the civil rights era, where you had athletes like Muhammad Ali and Jim Brown and so many others who were taking on a much bigger political, social role than we've seen athletes in many, many years. Does this time now compare to that at all? What do you remember of athletes in those days?
When Ali stood up against the odds, he was banned from boxing. Jim Brown found no happy hunting ground in the NFL. Today, the whole institution is behind the athletes. You don't have to be a rebel to do a voting commercial now. We've changed the scene. When you got coaches like yourself standing up, we've never had coaches standing up before. Politics is for them. No, politics is from womb to tomb is politics. To see athletes standing up in mass, I think the pioneers paved the way. Jim Brown said, you play football on Sunday, you take your uniform off, you're the nigga on Monday. Ali said the same thing, because we had to deal with the fact that there was a driving while black, playing ball while black. Uniform come off, your dignity comes off. But now we've grown. And that's what excites me so much about today's Black Lives Matter, because it's not for Black lives only. But when I think about losing this race, about rocks laying around back, when you think about we lost Michigan by 11,000 votes, rocks laying around, didn't vote. Today, you can elect Jamie Harrison, senator from South Carolina, Mike Esper, senator from Mississippi, Rev. Warnock, senator from Georgia, Amy McGrath from Kentucky. We have the power without burning a building, without cursing, without being mean, just right back and just vote. And make free throws. Just make free throws. We're winning this thing.
Just make your free throws. Y'all hear that out there? Stop making your free throws. Get your behind to the polls and go vote on voting day or vote early. That is, according to Reverend Jesse Jackson, the tantamount of you just making a free throw. Don't you be the reason why we lose this championship. So I hear the Reverend say it to us. Pastor Joe, tell us a little bit about the big event you all are doing coming up and how folks can plug in. And then Reverend Jackson, I just love for you to give us your Keep Hope Alive as much as you can on the way out, because we gonna need that as we get closer to election day.
Thank you so much, Pastor Mike. And let me just thank you and Steve for having Reverend on today and giving us a chance to just share some of what he is so passionate about. We had our staff call this morning, and Reverend spent 45 minutes reminding us of the value of what we're talking about right now. So this is so much in his lifeblood. He just celebrated his 79th birthday, and he is still pressing, guys. He is not slowing down in the least. He is still active. He is still up before the crack of dawn, making sure that wherever he can lean in and share his voice and his values and his vision, he does that. So we appreciate him so much. And I'm thankful for being able to lead our work here that's connected to Silicon Valley. You know, Reverend Jackson back in the 90s first connected with Silicon Valley, Steve Jobs and the Bill Gates of the world. And then about 5 years ago, he wanted to re-engage since social media and everything becoming so technically connected. He wanted us to have a real platform, a real voice in that setting, that we were serious about diversity and inclusion, and that everybody mattered in that space. And so we started what we call Push Tech. And that's Rainbow Push and Technology. And we wanted to make sure that we were getting resources to HBCUs that needed to train up young engineers and people that could be involved in the tech industry. And then we went to other industries that aren't necessarily tech-based, but they have a role, you know, your marketing people and your financial services. We wanted everyone to engage in the world of technology and be able to have a space, a voice, and an opportunity. And so this is our 5th year anniversary of what we call Push Tech 2020. And we're going to celebrate it next week. Thursday and Friday, we're going to have a celebration online, virtually, of course. And so you go to Rainbow Push SV, that's for Silicon Valley, rainbowpushsv.org, and you can register for our virtual conference next week. We're going to have some fantastic people. We're going to have the wonderful Angela Rye and Congresswoman Barbara Lee right here from Oakland. We're going to have the Honorable Willie Brown give a tribute to Reverend Jackson. We're also going to have speakers from the tech world, from various companies, Facebook and Airbnb and Salesforce, talk about what Reverend has done to help move the needle, to bring us closer to real diversity and real inclusion. So that's next Thursday and Friday, virtually. And we'd love for you and Steve to just drop us a line too, because we're actually including in the conference, every time we do a panel, we're gonna add a Your Voice, Your Vote portion, 60 seconds from people that we love to hear from, to remind us how, you know, important it is to vote. So even though we're doing Push Tech 2020, we can't be this close to the election and not remind people to get out and vote.
Push Tech 2020.
Well, Steve, let me throw a curve with you. I have a granddaughter who is in the Episcopal School in Washington, and she did a conference about a month ago. Kids going back to the elite private schools facing the George Floyd question. And she had 2,000 students around America. This week, this time, October 27th, Steve, Lapchick and Chris Broussard will be the co-host. I want you to be a part of that, Mr. Steve, sir. Thank you. Now, let me say to you all be on the phone that when we do what we're doing now, we make the world, but we're the leaders that we've been looking for. We're the answer. Because a little light will go a long ways when it's real dark. You use your light in darkness. Darkness always has to back up. You don't have to be mean or hateful. Just do your best, and God will do the rest. I also want to say to you, we went to Silicon Valley, 186 white women, 3 blacks, 1 Latino. Now there are 30 blacks on boards. That's as far as the direct action work. Facebook didn't have a black on the board. Neither Twitter. Need the Apple, but they do now because of the consistent, nonviolent direct action. We get 1,000 churches around the country. You know, many of these kids in jail in Oakland, San Francisco, in pretrial detention. If while they're waiting, if they didn't learn apps, codes, and programming, they come out and get reduced recidivism. Kids in jail, in fact, can use their masterful skills, if properly applied, to make a difference in the world. So we're working in jails. We're getting diapers for babies and baby food for babies and clothes for babies. But we're voting to change. And I've asked some epidemiologists. Dr. Fauci was our guest last week, Steve. And I said, Doc, what about, he said, well, they found a vaccine and a mask. I choose a mask over a vaccine. Yeah. He said, because we can do a mask out any scientist, just wrap back and put your mask on, wash your hands, and social distance. That's why NBA pulled up this magnificent thing and they prove if you honor the protocols, you can defeat this. And not a single case, Steve, not a single case. by honoring the protocols of mass. We worked, I think, with Fort Moultrie. We give them 1 million masks, 1 million masks. So, my friends, use your platform, and don't let anything break your spirit. And I said many times ago, Mac, keep hope alive. Let nothing break you. Keep hope alive. Don't surrender. Keep hope alive. Fight back. When you fight back, you win. And that's strength in numbers.
The great Reverend Jesse Jackson, everyone. So honored to have you on the Match for the People show, and thank you for your life of service and your legacy. And we know there's a lot of more to go. You still giving it to us, giving us that wisdom and inspiration. Thank you so much for joining, hanging out with us.
Well, Mike, let me just say you that someone said, how does it be 79? I've never been 79 before. I don't know how it feels. What I do know is that Mandela came out of jail at 71. He's president of South Africa 75. He got married at age 80. Most preaching at 80. So when God gives you breath, use your breath, and God give you some more. He give you the increase.
Yeah.
And so you never get tired of giving or living. And you serve. I want all you who listen today, website, rainbowpush.org. Hit membership, rainbowpush.org. Join Rainbow Push today. We need your help. I want to see you. I want you to be a card carrying member. When I see you on the championship table next year, I want to see you flash your card along with that golden ball.
It's a deal.
All right. Well, we are going to be tuning in for the Rainbow Push Tech Conference next week, and send me that link. We'll get a little voting video to you guys, and have the continued partnership. Bless you, Reverend Jackson. Be well, and we thank you for giving us this sacred time tonight.
Keep hope alive.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well, Steve, look like we got some homework assignments coming out of the conversation, huh?
Yes, we do. Yeah, he's he's still going strong, isn't he?
Yeah, it's pretty amazing to just see history in live and in person, and he has so many stories and memories that can continue to be a compass for us. And so I know that was a special moment for him, and certainly was for me and us. So yeah, a great highlight.
You know what? It was a good reminder to me of how far we've come, because I asked him about those athletes in the late '60s in the civil rights era: Muhammad Ali, Jim Brown, Lou Alcindor, and he quickly reminded me of how little support those guys had. And I know we still have a long way to go. There's no doubt about that. But you just think about the size of this movement that's happening and the number of people involved from all walks of life. Not just ordinary citizens, but corporations getting involved. I really believe that even though we got a lot of work left to do, I believe that what Reverend Jackson just talked about, it's a great reminder that we've come a long way. We really have, and this movement is gaining steam. It really is, and it's all going to try to create a better world for everybody involved, and that's the main takeaway. We're just trying to create a better place for our fellow citizens.
Yeah. Well, it's a great reminder to keep pushing and keep pressing on, and that's what we're going to do, not only tonight but in the days and weeks to come. So all of you, if you're not registered to vote, you may have missed the deadline, but in some states you still have the opportunity to register to vote. So as he powerfully stated, don't be the one breaking your free throws and costing us a championship. Get out there and register to vote, and let's make sure we do what we need to do, from the federal elections, presidential elections, all the way to the local elections. Find some races, find some reasons to vote, and let's make an impact. Now, for the last 30 minutes of this conversation, we wanted to highlight some of the greatest successes related to gun violence prevention that we've seen across the country. And this is a passion for both me and Steve. We actually met through Robin Thomas, who'll be on a little bit later on, at a gun violence prevention effort in Oakland. And we thought before we got into the election season, we bring this conversation back up to everyone and just help remind you that there are examples of success related to reducing gun violence that does not require us to be overly, politically caught in a vice or a logjam, but we can indeed scale up some projects and programs that actually do work. And so we're going to bring on a few friends and comrades and colleagues from the Bay Area to help us start this conversation. I want to first introduce Reagan Cunningham, who is a principal partner at the California Partnerships for Safe Communities. She has been one of the architects and project managers of the ceasefire effort in Oakland, and Brother David Muhammad, who has served as a longtime architect and even still in this moment, helping us to execute the effort, even in these lean and challenging times. We thought it'd be great to start the conversation off with them, and then we just gonna bring on a couple more people before our time expires tonight to help us have this conversation. But Reagan and David, welcome to Mass for the People. You on with me and Coach Steve Kerr.
Thank you for having us. Hey, Coach Kerr. Hey, Pastor Mike.
Hi, Reagan. Hi, David.
Yeah.
How are you guys?
Good.
Doing well.
Thank
Happy
you.
to be here.
Glad to be here. Hey, Pastor Mike, Coach Kerr, and just I want to reemphasize the points Coach Kerr said earlier about the NBA doing an extraordinary job, not only pulling that off, but the messaging in solidarity with the movements at this time. It really showed the class act that the NBA is in. So appreciate you, Coach Kerr, for pushing them in that way.
Well, thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Yeah. And thank you guys for everything you're doing. And it's been, Mike, I guess it's been about 7-8 months since we met at our event. And David, you were there in the church that day. And that was right before the pandemic. It was I think it was late February, maybe. But
we were worried Steph had it. That's what he was saying.
That's right. But I don't think any of us could have imagined what was coming, and that we'd still be in this place now, 7 months later.
That's right.
And it's just to go back to that event for all of you that weren't able to join us, we were along with the Giffords, Los Angeles Prevent Gun Violence, and the Golden State Warriors, the City of Oakland, our Live Free efforts. We were celebrating, or at least acknowledging, the progress of 5 years of work, at least that we know of. And, some of us could go back to a decade or so of work of really trying to scale up some of these efforts that do save lives, particularly the lives of those caught in the cycle of violence, particularly gun violence in Black and brown communities, without sending folks to jail. And I think I'll start with you, Reagan, because I know that you were and are a lifelong Oakland resident. And
yes. Sitting in Oakland right now.
Living in Oakland right now. Born and raised in the east side of the east deep Oakland. And but you said, and I remember many of our conversations, you cared about Oakland winning, not because you were working out of the mayor's office or working on the ceasefire strategy. You cared about it because you love Oakland. Just talk a little bit about the genesis of the work that we had to do and that you were a part of, just to give people a sense of where we had to come from in order to get to where we are today.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, yes, I do love Oakland, and that's what drives me. And what drives me even more than loving Oakland is loving our people, and wanting to ensure that there are better outcomes for young men who are at the very highest risk of violence, where, in most cities, Oakland included, but in most cities across the nation, those are African American and Latino young men. So it's wanting better outcomes for them. And, you talk about where we started. Well, we started like a lot of cities, just not knowing what to do. And for Oakland, that looked like gang injunctions. That looked like, what else did we have? We had teen curfews, or they at least tried teen curfews. We did a lot of things, and even including like kind of general outreach and intervention services that wasn't really specific to folks who are at the very highest risk. And through those efforts, what that yielded us was 127 homicides when we started in 2012. That's a failure. And we had to be honest with ourselves that what we were doing wasn't working. And actually right before the show, we just briefly talked about, as the city was struggling, and the city, I'm talking about elected officials, were struggling about what to do, it was the community who had the answer. It was the community who organized themselves. At that time, it was called OCO. Now it's called Faith in Action. But it was the community, OCO, who had lobbied the city for years to say, hey, there's a strategy that we found out about called ceasefire, and we want to implement it in Oakland. And it wasn't until 2012 that the elected officials finally got on the same page and said, yes, this is what we need to do. And so just even tying back to our previous conversation that you all had with Reverend Jackson, that the community had the answer. And the elected officials needed to listen to the community, and not just listen to the community, but resource the effort. When the city resourced the effort, actually put their money where their mouth was. From 2012 to 2018, we started out, like I said, with 126, 127 homicides. And in 2018, when I left the city, we had 67. Now, that is a dramatic reduction. At the same time, it's still not sufficient. That's still 67 young men whose mothers had to bury them or whose children will never see them again. But we were able to go from one of the most violent cities in the United States and the most violent city in the state of California to being able to see some real reductions and some real outcomes, and young men who now have a different experience in Oakland. Again, it's not perfect. We still have a long way to go, but the city, we had a lot of failures. But one of the things, like I said, that was just so vitally important and just ties back to the other part of the conversation is it's the community had the answer. The community organized itself. The community put pressure on elected officials and held them accountable. And through that organizing effort, we were able to see these reductions, and it wouldn't have happened without the community.
Yeah. I'll come to you in a second, Steve. But David, jump in here and just talk a little bit about, as someone who started out as the communities maybe some years ago through the mentoring center, you're now, I won't say you're a bureaucrat because you're certainly not, but you are one of the experts at helping to manage and implement and advise on how to do this in other cities. So maybe talk about the mechanical part of this, and then Steve definitely has some questions and thoughts.
Yeah, one, it has been incredible. As an example, Reagan and I, both born and raised in Oakland, who have been working on the strategy from different positions and titles. Both of us have jumped around, but have stayed focused on this for, it's getting close to a decade. And that has been part of the success around it. But, just a few points on the mechanics. The thing that I have learned working with Oakland and now numerous cities around the country is having to understand what I call the rocket science of your actions have to be aligned with your desired outcomes. And as simple as that is, that's why I jokingly call it the rocket science, is so many places just don't do that. Right. And so they'll do something like a real experience I had where we want to reduce gun violence over the next 12 months. Let's start a mentoring program for middle school students. And a mentoring program for middle school students is wonderful, and we need them, and they should happen. They won't achieve gun violence reduction in 12 months ever, right? And so what we did in Oakland was say, first, who are the people who are involved in gun violence? And that was a different population than what folks thought. We did a deep dive analysis and found that was people in their mid-20s who had serious criminal justice involvement, who were involved in crews and cliques, and who were very vulnerable. And so then we said, okay, we want to communicate that risk to them, like a public health initiative in COVID, telling people who are a certain age and have underlying health conditions, you have greater risk if you contract the disease. So we told these folks, not in a scared straight, not in a setup, purely what we call direct and respectful information. You need to know your risk factors show you're of a higher risk to be involved in violence exponentially. Then we said, but we want you to be alive. We want you to be free. We want you to be successful. And we are going to connect you with a credible messenger, somebody who has similar lived experience as you, somebody who's going to be able to navigate, help you navigate through the challenges, be in relationship with you, help you make better decisions, who is going to be tattooed to you for, they're going to call and text you every day. They're going to see you 2 to 3 times a week. And we did that. And the city funded and invested in 14 people who that is their full-time job. 14 life coaches, what we call intensive life coaches, who are these credible messengers, and that's the work that they do. And on top of that, other resources. And then there's also focused enforcement as a part of it. But that job is, as you know, Pastor McBride, you're part of these discussions in the beginning, is really focusing, getting the police out of the job of low-level enforcement and drug, and really getting them stop doing all of that, which causes mass incarceration and mass arrest, but focus those efforts on really the gun violence. And so this level of focused attention on the gun violence with intervention, with love, with resource, with hope, has been extraordinarily effective. We had 6 years of reductions in injury, shootings, and homicides. The city never experienced that in its history. And when we were in that church at Allen Temple Church, right before we all went indoors for 6 months, we were at that church, and I was trying to tell Coach Kerr we need him to run for something. At that point in time, we were almost at the end of March. We were almost a full quarter into the year. Oakland was at a 38% year-to-date decrease in homicides. Had we continued that trend, it would have been the lowest number of homicides in recorded history in Oakland. And then the pandemic happened. And 25 people funded by the city of Oakland to do intervention and outreach and respond to the hospital. The next day they weren't there. And for 5 months, they weren't doing that type of in-person interaction, as well as the crisis of the pandemic and all that it brought. You can imagine, unfortunately, what happened thereafter was a significant increase. And so we're now in the process of re-implementing and re-engaging, and we're seeing some fruits to that. But there's clear evidence of how successful the strategy has been.
Absolutely.
So I just want to tell our viewers out there that I was there at one of these monthly meetings where this gathering of people occurs, and I brought Steph Curry and Klay Thompson, and so we watched this whole event where Pastor Mike kind of hosted the group, and you had some of the youth that were involved in the gun violence. You had mentors, you had social workers. Mayor Libby Schaaf was there. There was a police officer there. Everybody sitting around this giant table. And it was one of the most inspiring nights of my entire life. And I know my players felt the same way. Klay was in tears basically by the end of the evening. He was so inspired. And what struck me was just this idea of just communicating, as Reagan, what you said, listening to our community, listening to what solutions they have, but then helping to fund those solutions, right? Because we need to hire those 14 full-time workers in order for this project to work, and we need to engage the police. And that was one of the things that really struck me too. The police officer there that night, he said, we used to get credit for arresting young men and women. Now we get credit for connecting them with the social workers, it was incredible. It gave me chills just thinking about that, because instead of this cycle of mass incarceration, we were actually giving people hope and giving them, really direct resources to try to help them. So I want our listeners to understand the scene and to really feel how the process worked. And then I'm going to turn around and ask you guys, Reagan and David, the question, because I feel like people need to experience this firsthand. They need the proximity. They need to see the humanity of all this. How can we teach people, just regular people who are going to their jobs and taking care of their families? How can we teach people the importance of these kinds of programs, and how can we help fund them, and how can we help publicize how crucially important these things are to help solve a lot of the problems that exist in our communities?
Yeah, I'll just respond first, David, if you don't mind. But I think one of the things, Coach Kerr, that you're tapping into, that the work of Ceasefire is really systems change work. And what I mean by that is that most systems, even social service systems, aren't really designed to work with those individuals who are at the very highest risk of violence. And certainly law enforcement is not organized that way at all. And so that's why I think with the ceasefire work that it was so powerful and had such an impact in Oakland is because systems actually had to shift, you know, based upon the data, as David mentioned earlier, in terms of who was at very highest risk. Systems had to shift to work with those individuals who are at very highest risk in the right way. You know, when I say in the right way, if the average age is 26, then an after-school program is not going to work for a 26-year-old. So working with them in the right way. And to your point around law enforcement, you know, the Oakland Police Department, I worked there for 6 years, that they did use to measure their success by the number of people that they put in jail, the number of even guns that they recovered, not by the reductions in shootings and homicides. And so it's moving an organization, literally like moving a mountain, so that the focus then becomes reducing shootings and homicides instead of these low-level crimes like David mentioned. And so that's one of the reasons why I think a ceasefire can be very difficult for cities to implement, but completely worth it. Because we're not designed to really, meaning cities, law enforcement aren't designed to do that type of work and to do it effectively. And I think ceasefire gave us that opportunity in Oakland to do that. Now, in terms of your question about folks getting involved, there's plenty of opportunities, I think, for folks to get involved. It does make it a little challenging with COVID because we do want to continue social distancing and wearing masks. But Faith in Action East Bay has been organizing night walks in East Oakland. And anybody can join and participate. They're Friday nights. I believe it's available on the Faith in Action website. And you can just go and make your voice heard and work with community. The other thing that I always encourage people to do, because I do feel like real power is in the hands of the people. So signing up at whether it's your council meetings, commission meetings, signing up whether it's on the agenda or not, and voicing that gun violence reduction is a priority. Getting your voice out there. And in this new COVID environment, that means doing it on Zoom. But I think our voices need to continue to be heard around this issue.
And I would just briefly say that, you know, there's organizations around the country that do this type of work: street outreach, violence intervention, credible messengers, neighborhood change agents, and understanding that that's the work of deep in intervention to try to reduce gun violence now. Right. There's also prevention work that is awesome that we need, and knowing what you're trying to do. If you want to say, I want to fund toward reducing gun violence now, there's organizations in Oakland like Community and Youth Outreach. There's Advanced Peace. There's Life Camp in New York. There's Ready in Chicago. There's these organizations, Urban Peace Institute in Los Angeles. There's these type of organizations that have street outreach workers, credible messengers, people with similar lived experiences, violence intervention workers, and then in terms of rolling your sleeves up and being involved, Reagan's good point of Faith in Action's affiliates around the country are doing these night walks to neighborhoods hardest hit by crime and violence. So there's definitely ways to participate, to donate, to be involved. And we would love for folks in Oakland, specifically, you know, one of the main organizations providing the life coaching is called Community and Youth Outreach, CYO. But also through the Department of Violence Prevention. And the last thing I'll say on this, and Reagan and I work together in many cities, and my other partner, Devone Bogan, will be on later. And we are launching this national network of offices of violence prevention, these city agencies all across the country who are either funding this work or doing this work or coordinating it. And this national network that we've been cooking up with Pastor McBride for years and others that we're launching will be one of these places where if you want to work in a particular city, we can connect you to that agency in that particular city.
So stay on, David, because I want to bring Devone, I want to bring Robin into the mix, and we all could just have a nice, you know, family conversation. Certainly want to give him some time to speak, but then, you know, let's all just mix it up till we get pushed off the air by everybody who's just tired. But I see Devone.
You don't even need to speak, Devone. It just speaks for you.
Mute yourself, Devone, so that mask you can't blame us not hearing you on that mask. Unmute yourself, bro. So we got Devone Bogan, who is the I don't know, you the CEO, you the HNIC. What are you?
Oh wow.
The Advanced Peace Movement.
Yeah, that's it, brother. That's it.
Devone,
I'm the chief bottle washer for Advanced Peace.
Bottle watcher, right? You have been an important an important mind and thought partner and architect of this work, not just here in the Bay Area, but you're in a number of cities across the country. People are literally asking you to come to their city and to help them figure this out. You've been hearing the conversation. Just kind of, put your 2 cents in, but also give us a sense about this Department of Violence Prevention movement that's happening, because I think that's the next iteration of how we scale this up across the country.
Yeah, well, I think both David and Reagan, hey y'all, did a phenomenal job of really, bringing it all together. At the end of the day, if we're going to be successful at achieving optimal outcomes for violence reduction goals in our cities, we cannot do it without the partnership and engagement and relationship with those at the center of firearm activity. Those individuals have to be at the center of the solution equation if we're going to be successful. So as long as we continue to work around the edges and be unwilling to go right to the source of the issue, we're going to be challenged. And it's interesting, as David pointed out, in terms of these mixed match goals and objectives tied to certain ideas around outcomes. They just don't work. I think it's often crazy that in every one of the cities that we're in, and these cities have phenomenal opportunities, strategies, etc., less than 2% of our fellows are being engaged by any other public or community-based system of care before their enrollment in the fellowship. So how is it that you are going to be successful at achieving violence reduction goals in your city if you're not, from a public system standpoint or a community-based standpoint, focusing your engagement on those individuals at the center of the hostilities? We've got to do a better job at doing that kind of work to achieve not only near-term positive outcomes, but sustaining those outcomes over a long period of time, like, for example, the city of Richmond has been able to do, even in the midst of a COVID pandemic. With regard to the Office of Violence Prevention National Network, look at me, I'm tickled pink. I mean, this is just literally about opportunity, man. I mean, when and I got to brag a little bit, 13, 14 years ago, 15 years ago, when David reached out to me and said, hey, let's do this, I was like, what is this dude talking about? And put me in a position to help found and direct the first of its kind Office of Neighborhood Safety, Office of Violence Prevention in the country. And, in facilitating that work, I felt very much alone. I mean, very much isolated on an island by myself, with the exception of the very people on my team that surrounded me. So it's amazing now to be a part of a conversation to bring more than 20 of these organizations from around the country together nationally to make sure that we're operating in one accord and doing some positive and powerful things collectively to move the needle from a public systems change vantage point. I mean, we're demonstrating every single day that arrest and prosecutions alone will not work. These other strategies, as you are so all about saying, there are proven strategies that have demonstrated significant success in this space without the use of the tools that law enforcement bring to the table to actually create healthier, safer, and more just communities. So I'm very much excited about being a part of the conversation and about being a part of the learning that I am certain will take place with this colorful mix of people from around the country.
Well, Robin, get ready to jump in, because this is like, you had a big old family dinner with everybody who's hungry, and we try to get that last piece of cake. But I owe my relationship in large part to with Steve Kerr to Robin. She introduced me and Steve at the event, and me and Steve been texting and phoning and getting into trouble ever since. So you got to blame this all on Robin. But Robin,
good trouble.
Good trouble, right? talk a little bit about the report that you all pulled together at Giffords, which was a culmination of your leadership, I know for sure, because of the years that many of us have been really trying to figure out how do we get this work, the brilliant, proven work of many of us on the ground to break through into non-Black spaces, if we can just be so frank, because a lot of us know this stuff works, but it seemed like a lot of our mainstream folks just didn't know about it, and you created a report, then you pulled Steve and a whole bunch of other folks in. So come on and just say a little something.
All right. Well, I feel like I'm sort of at the all-star table right now with all my favorite people who are doing this work and talking about this work. So I'm just sort of honored to be with you all. And as always, find it so inspiring to hear from you about the good work we're all doing. Michael, you're the one who helped me have that first light bulb go off, which is that for so long we'd been working on policies, laws to prevent gun violence. And you turned to me one day and you said, everything you're talking about is really great, and it addresses the supply side of the problem of gun violence to some extent. But the problem is you're not even looking at the demand side of the problem. What is it that's driving violence in our communities? How do we get at the root cause of preventing and intervening from the first place, rather than just looking at the guns and always focusing on the flow of guns? And I realized that as a movement, a gun violence prevention movement, we had not been learning about and talking about and adequately lifting up the kinds of non-policy programming that is so successful, so proven, so impactful, and so humane. It's about giving people a chance to choose a different path in life. And so we decided we would study it. We would learn about what's going on out there, who's doing it, what's working, how can we lift up those people, those programs, those strategies, educate folks. Anytime I get someone's ear, I happen to be on a different panel with Coach Kerr, and I said, listen, I know how much you love Oakland. I know you all are moving, but I know how much you and your team loves that city. And I just want to tell you about what's happening there, because I think you'll care. I think you'll be excited to learn that there's good work happening and lives are getting saved and progress is being made, and we need to lift that up. So we wrote a report a couple of years ago about, it's called the Case Study in Hope, and folks like Reagan and Devone, in Richmond and all the other people working on that program, we wanted to tell the story of what happened, but really dig into the details, because it's not just about the success of ceasefire. It's about what it takes for these programs to work anywhere, really. And Devone pointed at some of it. It's about a people-centric approach. It's about getting the community on board first and foremost. It's about bringing law enforcement in. It's about bringing city leaders in. And when you do it right, when you do it with the right intention and the right approach, these programs work. It's not just Oakland. It's not just Richmond. These programs are replicable in Boston and Connecticut, all over the country, and we need it. So, whether it's Chicago or Baltimore or St. Louis, every city needs these types of holistic, really bought in programming. So, I know all of y'all have some really good insights. I'll just sort of say that for us, for me at the Giffords organization, for those of us who work in gun violence prevention across the country, this is the most hopeful, exciting learning that I've ever done in this space. The success of these programs at reducing violence, at changing the face of communities keeps me going. In the hard days of this work, I know that there is hope, because I know we have solutions. And if we're willing to invest in people and the right kind of programs, we can make an incredible impact. And I know that's what I'm trying to lift up and do everything I can to help move that forward. I know Coach Kerr feels the same, and we're just sort of honored, I think, to do whatever we can to lift up the hard work that you all are doing every day in the trenches that's changing lives and changing communities.
Yeah, Coach, do you remember those first conversations with Robin about pulling you down the rabbit hole? Because you were already speaking out. I joked, him and Pop, they like the Coach Popovich, and now I guess Pete Carroll, they're the activists of the coaching.
Yeah, Pop taught me all my bad habits for sure. But yeah, Robin, I'm trying to remember. We met.
It was an Aspen Institute event with the Newtown parents.
With the Newtown parents, that's right. And then we've done several other events as well with Gabby Giffords, and so we've gotten to know each other pretty well. But this interaction that you got me involved in with Pastor Mike that night in Oakland was it was the most powerful for me, because a lot of the events that we do are great. They're fundraisers and they're raising awareness, but this was the one that really hit my heart, because we were right in the thick of it. We were communicating directly with the people involved, and that's where you really see the humanity in it, and you see that, man, we have, these are not statistics, right? This is not about numbers and percentages. It's about people. It's about human beings in our communities, and we have the ability to impact them. But it has to come through innovative programs like Ceasefire, and then we've got to do everything we can to help fund these programs to make sure we can sustain them.
Yeah, and I knew when I introduced you to Michael, you'd be just right in there, because he's irresistible. So I'm so glad. I'm so glad. And I think, that program that we did that day, and Reagan was part of it, and obviously Pastor Mike was kind of our master of ceremonies. I wish I could take everyone to one of those events. I feel like anyone who witnesses what's really happening in these communities and the transformation that's taking place would be completely won over. And it's my only frustration is there's no way to bring everyone in the world to one of these events to see it and be inspired by it and get behind it and know that, change is possible. And if we believe in it, then it's going to happen. Which is not to in any way take away from what I know has been many years of hard work, day in and day out. And the first thing I tell, legislators and city leaders who want to know how do they do, ceasefire programs in their city is put on your seatbelts for a bumpy and long ride. This takes work. This takes getting people to the table. It takes winning over hearts and minds. This is not, you throw some money at the problem and it's going to go away. This is about digging in there and really getting credibility and bringing people to the table. And it works, but it requires, I think, the real kind of commitment of the heart and soul and mind of a community. So it's really, that was just such a wonderful day. And I do remember, I think it was like a week before lockdown, and it was like the last exciting thing I've done in 2020.
Well, Devon, I love for you to jump in here, and then Reagan too. I think we lost David. I hope he comes back. But, as we try, to Robin's point, we can't recreate that day per se everywhere. But part of what we're trying to do with the Office of Violence Prevention is create an institution in every city that have these problems, where the tax base of our cities can flow to those into those departments without having to fight for the resources to fund neighborhood change agents, to fund the fellowship type programs, where we don't have to depend on law enforcement to convene people to use their kind of stick, right? We just want a big old carrot shot with steroids where it's so big that there's just never scarcity. Talk a little bit then just about the possibility of what offices of violence prevention could do, in cities across the country as an institutional home for the lessons and the wisdom. And you love to say this all the time, Devon, you don't want people to replicate or clone what we did. You want them to innovate on what we did, right? So just say a few words about that. I know we're running out of time, but I definitely wanted to make sure we get that.
Just first and foremost, I believe it is happening. I think the narrative around these proven alternatives are coming to fruition in terms of more and more people understanding what's available, what kind of opportunities are possible. I don't know if any of you saw the recent New York Times article that just was published, and it talked about the increase of violence during COVID without mentioning law enforcement. It focused strictly on these prevention, intervention, and interruption programs and their players. And I understand that's the first time an article such has been written, and it was written in the New York Times. So I think we're in this moment right now where this narrative shift is happening, and we're building esteem as we move forward. I think these offices of violence prevention coming together within this national network is only going to increase and expand that opportunity for us to roll right through that door, all the way through the house, through the back door and through the neighbor's front door. So I'm excited. I'm excited about this because I think the time is here, the time is now, and the time has come. And so I think it's happening, Michael. I think it's happening.
And Reagan, as someone who served as one of the first, real project manager type folks inside a city or police framework, don't you feel like this is the next iteration of our collective work, right? Because we got some stories of how we had to fight in Oakland to even get done. We got done.
Yes, we have plenty of stories, but we'll talk about those offline. But I think to Devone's point, I think now is the moment. For so many years, we had to convince people that the lives of African American and Latino young men were valuable, that they were worth saving, and use all kind of arguments to be able to get them to be able to focus on that. And I'm grateful that we're at the point now, at least in a lot of cities with high incidence of gun violence, where now that can be institutionalized. Now people are beginning to see value in the work, and more importantly, in the people. But that's not something that's just going to continue on its own. And that's why, I'm just really big about community organizing, because without community continuing to push for that, people, elected officials have momentary priorities. It's like the hot item of today because it's an issue right now. But, when it stops becoming the headline for them on that day, then they lose focus. And so that's why I always believe that institutionalization is in these departments, but also in the people and in the community continuing to show up, to continuing to express their voice, and frankly, continuing to vote too, to make sure that you have people in offices who understand the challenges and also understand the value and the humanity of the people who are being most impacted.
Hey, Mike, let me just say, I agree with Reagan, but hell no. Slavery is over. Emancipation not turning the other way. We going forward.
Yeah. We going 100% forward, and yes, slavery is over. At least the last time I checked.
We've learned too much and done too much hard work collectively to let this slip from us.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the cool thing about it too, I think, Steve, we were talking about this after the event in Oakland, that you can find people who will be like, I'm against you taking my guns away, but who's against preventing people from being shot? It's like, that's not a political. If it is a political hang up for you, then you're just a word I can't say because I'm a reverend trying to remain one. But it's something that should be agreeable. And Steve, I love to that you have kind of the last say with our panelists around this. But what do you think is the biggest next step for all of us who are learning about these strategies? How can we help folks appreciate the importance of advocating for them?
That's what I think about a lot. That was kind of the point of my question earlier to Reagan, was just because I think there's so many people out there who care. I think this social movement that's happening right now is proving that people everywhere who care and who want to help and who want better lives for the people around us in our communities, and they want equality and they want justice. But I think people don't always understand how to achieve that. Voting is for sure one of the big keys to that. But I love what Reagan just said. Getting your hands dirty at the grassroots. Really getting to know people on the ground who are doing the work in the community and supporting those people. Really, that's where the impact is made. And so I would just maybe just say to all the people watching, if you're part of this movement, just think about getting involved at some level with a grassroots organization in whatever issue really speaks to you. Whether it's gun violence prevention or education or whatever it is, if you can play a role somehow at the grassroots level, that's where you can make a huge impact.
Yes. All right, Robin, tell us how to get our hands on this report and to support the work you're doing. Devone will come to you, give everybody a advanced peace plug, and then Reagan will come to you, and then I think we're going to get everybody there Monday evening back.
Well, I would say please go visit the Giffords Law Center website or the Giffords website. The report, which is a case study in hope, I think it's one of the best names that we've come up with, is on the website if you're interested in learning more about the work that we learned about in Oakland. And if you want to get involved in gun violence prevention through the Giffords organization, I would encourage you to do so. But more importantly, please vote and call your friends in swing states and make sure they're going to vote. There's never been a more important time. So we appreciate Coach Kerr and Pastor McBride, and I appreciate Reagan and Devone so much for everything that they're doing to make our country and our communities a better place. And I appreciate being on here with you all.
Yeah, thanks for joining us and hanging out. Devone.
Right on, Robin. Hey, Coach Kerr, holler at your boy Matt Barnes and find out more about what he's doing with Advanced Peace. You'd be very proud of his ambassadorship with the work on the streets and what we're doing. But I would also encourage folks.
He's on y'all's board, right? Isn't he?
Well, Matt Barnes is really an ambassador. Michael K. Williams is on the board if you got connects with him as well. But Matt's just doing some phenomenal work in terms of making sure folks are more aware of this body of work, and certainly the body of work that surrounds Advanced Peace. But I would, like Robin said, encourage folks to visit advancedpeace.org, our website, but definitely follow us on Twitter at We Advance Peace and on Instagram at Advanced Peace. You'll learn a lot. Thanks for having me, Mike.
Oh, come on, Soldier. You know how we do it. The great Reagan Cunningham, not Harmony.
We're still getting used to it. No, I just really want to appreciate you all just for having all of us on the show and just even being able to be a part of this conversation. I think, so much work has been done in this field, and we just have to keep on pushing to make it continue to be a priority. I encourage people to read A Case Study in Hope. I know it's long, but there is a shorter version available on the Giffords website. But also, most importantly, to support programs like Advanced Peace, to support programs like Ceasefire, to support just this huge body of work that's available to us now, because our lives matter, and I think one of the biggest ways we can show that is supporting programs like this and showing up and letting our voices be heard. So again, I just thank you all for everything that you all have done and continue to do, and just an honor to be with all of you on the panel today.
All right. We had the crew, we had the homies, and David Muhammad, he never made it back. The Warriors ain't playing. I don't know what maybe watch Monday Night Football. I don't know. But you can go visit his organization, NICJR.org. And they got some of the dopest reports. We've done some great work together, particularly on shrinking the beast, how to reallocate resources into these public safety initiatives during this moment where folks are talking about reimagining public safety. Love y'all. Thank y'all for hanging out with us. Coach, we had quite a day. We had quite a conversation. We had a night of hope. We started out with the Reverend Jesse Jackson, and we ended up with the Peacemaking Homies.
A case study in hope. That's a beautiful expression. Yeah, we should use that.
Yeah, we should.
More often. I love it.
Yeah. Well, I just want to appreciate your partnership, friendship, and collaboration on all these efforts. I thought we could end our time with me just showing you a quick slide that captures the impact of our collective work. We started again Mass for the People about in April of 2020, and look at what we've been able to do, Coach. Since the start of our effort, we've been able to have this kind of impact of mass. Can you see that?
I cannot. Let's see. There we go. Now I can.
Now you can see it. We have indeed been able to.
Wow.
That is at the. Let me kill this slide over here so you can. So we have handed out well over 1.2 masks, 160,000 bottles of sanitizer. We're in 35 cities across the country, if you can believe that. All as a result of people's giving, and these weekly shows have allowed people to tap into our collective work and really imagine their own engagement in a way that we, I think, didn't imagine before when we got this thing started. So thanks for all the partnering you've done with us. And I hope that, we can continue to spread the word of just the impact we can have. As folks have been saying, there's strength in numbers.
Strength in numbers, indeed. Great job, Mike. Who could have guessed when you started this 7 months ago that there'd be a 1.2 million masks given out? It's incredible. So,
and I think they may have shorted us by 500,000 because I think we bought a few more, but I'll talk to the team later about updates.
Get a new slide up there next week.
All right, y'all. Well, we out here. We went overtime by 20 minutes, and so we're gonna let y'all get back to your lives. But we thank y'all. Thank you for hanging out with us. And as Reverend Jackson said, you got 3 weeks to practice your free throw shooting. Don't you leave no points off the board. Go register to vote. Wash your hands. Wear a mask. Social distance, and we'll be back at a later date. Check in with y'all. God bless. Take care.